You know, when we think about India's geography, the rivers are so much more than just lines on a map. They're literally the country's lifelines. They've carved out the land, shaped history, and, they still power the economy today. So we're going to dive deep into this incredible network. Okay, just take a look at this. It's an absolutely incredible spot. Right here, this is where a huge story kicks off. It's a story that involves massive glaciers, towering mountains, and vast plains. And it all leads to the birth of one of the most sacred rivers on Earth. We're going to circle back to exactly what's happening in this picture in just a bit, so keep it in mind. All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at India's two main river systems. Then, we'll explore the Himalayan rivers, followed by the peninsular rivers. After that, we'll connect it all to the economy and people's lives. And finally, we'll get into the big challenge of pollution. Okay, first things first. When it comes to India's rivers, everything really boils down to one simple division. You can basically split them all into two big groups, and it's all based on where they come from, their origin. Seriously, if you get this one distinction, everything else makes a lot more sense.
So, here's the breakdown. You've got the Himalayan rivers on one side. These guys are perennial, meaning they flow all year round. Why? Because they're fed by both melting glaciers and rain. They're also the new kids on the block, geologically speaking, so they're still actively cutting through those huge mountains. Then you have the peninsular rivers. These are the old-timers. They're seasonal, so their flow really depends on the monsoon rains. They're a bit shorter and flow through much older, more stable valleys. Two totally different characters, right?
All right, let's head north. We're starting in the Himalayas, home to three absolute giants of the river world. I mean, these are the titans, born from the snow and ice of the highest mountains on the planet. First on our list is the Indus. This river has an epic starting point over in Tibet, near Mansarovar Lake. From there, it heads west, entering India through Ladakh. And look at this map. It doesn't just meander. It carves this incredible, deep gorge and starts collecting water from all these other rivers, its tributaries, building up this massive network as it goes. Now, here's a key term you'll want to know, Panjnad. It's basically the name for the 5 famous rivers of Punjab all coming together. You've got the Sutlej, Beas, Ravi, Chenab, and Jhelum. They all meet up, and then, as one combined force, they flow right into the Indus. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, next up, the big one, the Ganga. You could argue this is the most iconic river system in all of India. It's not just geographically vital, it's deeply, deeply sacred culturally. The entire Ganga Basin is it's the lifeblood for hundreds of millions of people. And hey, remember that picture from the beginning? This is it. This explains what was happening. See, the Ganga doesn't just pop into existence. It's formed right here, at a place called Devaprayag. You have two powerful rivers, the Bhagirathi and the Alaknanda, each starting from a different glacier. They meet, they merge, and from that exact point onwards, the river is known as the Ganga. That's the birthplace we saw. You know, a river is only as mighty as the smaller rivers that feed it, and the Ganga has an absolutely enormous network of them. You've got rivers joining from the left, coming down from the Himalayas, like the Gagara and the Kosi, and then from the right, it gets its biggest partner, the Yamuna. That's its longest tributary, plus others like the Son and the Damodar. All of that water coming together is what gives the Ganga its incredible power. Our third Himalayan giant is a real-world traveler, the Brahmaputra. I mean, its journey is just epic. It starts way out in Tibet, cuts across India, and then finishes its journey in Bangladesh. And what's really fascinating is that it changes its name and its whole personality as it moves through these different regions. This really tells the story of its journey. So up in Tibet, it's called the Tsengpo, which means the purifier. Then it makes this dramatic entrance into India through a massive gorge in Arunachal Pradesh, and there people call it the Deheng. Once it hits the flat plains of Assam, it gets really wide and powerful, and that's where it becomes the Brahmaputra. But the story's not over. It flows into Bangladesh, and boom, another name change, the Jamuna. Okay, so we've covered the Himalayan giants. Now let's head south, down to the Deccan Plateau. It's a completely different scene here. We're talking about the peninsular rivers. These are ancient waterways, totally rain-fed, that have been carving their way through this old landscape for, millions of years. This map is perfect for getting the lay of the land. You can see right away there are two main directions they flow. The majority of the big ones, think Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, they all head east and empty into the Bay of Bengal. But then you've got a couple of important ones, like the Narmada and the Tapi, that do their own thing and flow west into the Arabian Sea. And when it comes to size, there's no contest. The Godavari is the king of the peninsular rivers. It's almost 1,500 kilometers long. That's why it's often called the Dakshin Ganga, which means the Ganga of the south. Of course, the Krishna and the Narmada are no small streams either. They're huge systems too.
So here's another key difference: how they end their journey. The rivers flowing east hit a really gentle slope as they approach the coast. So they slow down, drop all the rich soil they've been carrying, and form these huge fertile areas called deltas. But the west-flowing rivers, they're moving through much steeper land, through these deep rift valleys. So instead of a delta, they form what's called an estuary, basically a deep channel where the river crashes into the sea.
And of course, these rivers aren't just sitting there looking pretty on a map. They're hubs of human activity and development. Take the Narmada, for example. It's home to the enormous Sardar Sarovar project. That's a massive dam that's all about providing water for farming, drinking water for cities, and generating electricity for millions of people across several states.
So, this all leads to the big question, right? Why does any of this matter? Well, the impact these rivers have on the economy and just on the day-to-day lives of more than 1 billion people, it's almost impossible to overstate. Think about it. These rivers are the foundation for so much. They're the water for the farms that feed the country. They're highways for boats and barges. They're power plants for clean energy. And, most basically, they're the source of the fresh water that comes out of our taps and runs our industries. They do it all. And to really understand how valuable this fresh water is, just think about this. Yeah, the Earth is like 71% water, we all know that. But a whopping 97% of all that water is salt water in the oceans. You can't drink it, you can't farm with it. That tiny fraction left is fresh water, and a huge chunk of that is locked up in ice. So the water flowing these rivers, it is unbelievably precious. But here's the tough part. This incredibly precious resource is in serious trouble. These lifelines that the whole country depends on are facing a massive threat: pollution. And it's a double whammy, affecting not just the quality of the water, but the sheer amount of it too. It's really a vicious cycle, and this breaks it down pretty well. First, demand for water is just exploding, for homes, for factories, for farms. So we're pulling more and more water out, which means the rivers themselves are shrinking. Second, at the very same time, we're dumping huge amounts of untreated sewage and industrial waste right back into them. The end result? The river gets so polluted that it just can't clean itself anymore. Its natural systems get completely overwhelmed, and it just spirals downwards. Now, the good news is people are aware of this crisis. There are huge efforts underway to try and fix it. A big one is the Namami Gange program. And what's key here is that it's not just about filtering out the pollution. The goal is total rejuvenation, fixing sewage plants, conserving water, and even just making people aware of the problem. It's a massive undertaking. So that leaves us with one last really big question to think about. We've talked about rivers like the Indus and the Brahmaputra that don't just stay in one country. They cross international borders. And that creates some really tricky political questions. When a river flows through multiple nations, who gets to decide how the water is used? Who actually has the right to it? It's a huge challenge, and the answers aren't just about geography. They're about politics, diplomacy, and survival.